Hey, today I have Kate LaSala with me on the Call a Death Doula um, conversation video project, which is a space for people to learn about what death doulas are, the variety of death doulas there are, and also for death doulas to just really get to share what they do and get the world to see who they are. So that's what this is all about. So thanks, Kate, for coming on. And just tell me how you got into this work and all your things.
So I came to death work, much like I think most people, through a personal experience. Um, Several years ago, we had two senior dogs, Mr. Barbo and Boo Boo. Boo Boo is my heart dog, but Mr. Barbo started to decline. It was a very long decline, and I was looking for information about pet death. And I had been through pet death before, but I'm also a trainer. I'm a multi-credentialed certified behavior consultant, and I focus on fear and aggression in my behavior work. So I have inevitably a percentage of clients that choose behavioral euthanasia or rehoming or surrendering for those pets. And that's a very stigmatized loss, that sector of rehoming and behavioral euthanasia. And I felt in my behavior practice I was missing a component of being able to support my clients once they made that decision. So my entry into doula work was sort of two-faced. It was one as a way to help those clients that I have in my behavior practice. I've also been in practice long enough on my behavior work that I have clients I've worked with, 10 years ago that have returned to me as their dog was aging naturally, asking me to help them, you know, do quality of life assessments or help them make those end of life decisions. And I felt like I wasn't really equipped to do that because it was sort of out of my lane as a trainer.
Just
So
just to be
that thought
just to be
process in
clear.
combination.
Yeah. Let me just interrupt you for a minute because I'm like following you. So you are a death doula that supports pet death, right? And so your
Yes.
training and your aggressive stuff like that, that's for animals, not for people, right? Because
Yes,
when you were
exactly.
talking, I'm like,
No,
well,
no, no.
there are aggressive
Yeah,
people
there are
as
some
well.
aggressive
But
people, but
okay, so
yeah, that's not my specialty.
your clients are
Or
the
the
owners of these animals that you've worked with. So you're
Yes, exactly.
okay. Thank you. That my
Yeah.
mind was as I was following.
Yeah, no, I probably should have prefaced that from the beginning.
That's cool. No.
So the combination of feeling like I needed to be able to support those clients going through behavioral euthanasia or rehoming or end of life for their dogs or their cats, in combination with me personally navigating end of life, coming up, sort of anticipatory grief of losing these two senior dogs that we had shared our lives with. So I went through the University of Vermont companion animal death doula um, certification, and that really helped sort of navigate me through Barbo's loss. And it was so helpful because I knew, as hard as that loss was for me, that facing Boo Boo, who was my heart dog, the potential of her dying, that I was not equipped for that. So the doula program really gave me some tools for that. Of course, you're never prepared for a significant loss like that. So even though on paper I had all the tools, I had all the resources, I had everything, when she eventually passed away in April of 2024, I was completely distraught. I was completely beyond, anything, and I needed additional support. So I reached out to a doula friend of mine who was actually my instructor at University of Vermont, and for about a year, Angela helped support me through that. And my husband very astutely said about 3 weeks after Boo Boo died, when I was just completely non-functional, he was like, Kate, I know you're a doula, I know you're a trainer, I know you know all this stuff, but even doctors need to go to the doctor, and I think you need some extra help. And so that was really an insightful observation, that even though on paper I had all these resources and I should have been able to handle this, even the professionals need support sometimes.
Absolutely.
So I have been doing this now for many years, and it's become a really nice supplement to my behavior practice. And I get people now who are just coming to me for doula support that are not behavior clients, and it's been exactly kind of how I imagined it. And last month I was actually one of the featured speakers at the Losing Lulu Summit, which was a summit all about behavioral euthanasia because it's such a stigmatized topic, and very sort of taboo. So there was a almost 2 week long summit where I was one of the speakers talking about that, and I spoke about how a death doula for pets can support people who are going through behavioral euthanasia. So it was a really good platform, really good sort of raising awareness about doulas and end of life, how we can memorialize, how we can do legacy work, how we can honor these animals and the impact that they've had on our lives, even though they've passed on.
Right. Right. Wow. It's amazing.
So, and for me, my training work, I came to be a trainer because of Boo Boo. She's literally my logo, the face of my logo. So I really feel like this work, this doula work and my training work is in a way their legacy, Barbara and Boo Boo's legacy, because I'm doing it because they influence me so heavily. And it's really rewarding. Once Boo Boo died, I wasn't functional. The only things I could really do were my client sessions, and it really was healing to do those sessions, and it really felt like I'm doing this work in her memory, in her honor, and that was the push that I needed. So, getting to this point of sort of turning grief into gratitude, like I was incredibly sad and I was grieving, but I got to a point where I could be grateful for those influences in my life and how they continue to have an impact on others, even though they're gone. And, I tell people I love my death work, and they look at me like I have 12 heads. And I'm like, no, I really do, because people who need that support, it's so difficult for them to find that support in many spaces. And so I love being, being a safe place for them and helping them navigate that and work through whatever they need to work through.
Yeah, and that's so beautiful that your healing and your process of going through the death doula training for animals um helped you get through the death of one and also prepare you for the next. And I talk a lot about
Right.
practicing death. And that's kind of the anticipatory grief. It's like, yeah, you can
Mm-hmm.
get ready for it. You can prepare your system for it. And so many
Mm-hmm.
people like don't want to think about it. They just completely block themselves off. And when they get to that point, they're shocked and they're freaked out because like their
Mm-hmm.
system, they've been holding so tight and it kind of explodes
Yeah.
them. So
Yeah.
yeah, also being able to hold the space of deep pain and deep gratitude
Mm-hmm.
for people. So when we're
Yeah.
able to hold that, I mean, it's healing for me to be a death doula
Yeah. Yep.
constantly. Every time I help someone, I'm like, wow, okay, that's right.
Yeah.
This is true. There is peace in this space that we can hold
Mm-hmm.
for both of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. One of the, I'm big both on the training side and sort of the doula side of raising awareness and education about things. And so I have a library of free resources on my website. And one of the resources I've developed is sort of an animal companion animal advanced care directive in a sense. So it walks people through, kind of to your point, what you're saying, like to pre-plan, to think about these things. It walks through and opens conversation opportunities for people to have with their family about what procedures or treatments might you be willing to do for your animal? What is your line in the sand? Things you absolutely would not be willing to do. And I encourage people to revisit that. It's a living document. It's not something you just do once and then check you're done. Because as that animal is aging and their health is changing, those decisions might be different. So when, Barbaro had this long period of decline, almost like 2 years, where he was very arthritic and he had pain and we were managing it, and then it would stop working. And so it wasn't a clear, like, oh, he has cancer and he's going to die. It was this very prolonged thing, which can be pretty agonizing because you're living in that period of anticipatory grief and constantly on edge and caretaking and everything. And it's difficult. Whereas Boo Boo 2 weeks before she died, she was running off leash through the woods and she was fantastic. And then there was like overnight, suddenly there was something wrong. And so at that point in time, she was almost 15 and a half. And my husband and I had these conversations and we said, we're not going to put them through chemo. We're not going to do invasive treatments or diagnostics. And, they suspected she had a tumor behind her eye, like a brain tumor behind her eye. And at 15 and a half, she would have needed to be sedated for an MRI. And we just said, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to risk her dying in the MRI alone and not with us. And so we just made that comfort care decision to manage whatever time we had left with her without putting her through that. Because even if they had said, yes, confirm she has a tumor, it's not going to change our course of treatment. They're not going to do brain surgery on a 15-and-a-half-year-old dog. So we had these conversations. So it was devastating news, but we weren't then in the moment when we're super emotional wrangling with, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Because we had conversations for probably 10 years at this point as the dogs were aging. And so I really want people to think about those things and to be open to having those conversations. So I put together that advanced care directive as sort of a guide to open up these conversations, to encourage people to have them with their family so that you're not making rushed, emotionally driven decisions sitting in the emergency room.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. That is amazing. Who would think about that to make it an advanced care directive for your pet?
Yeah.
But yeah, so in that emotional time, we've had a couple of dogs and we're just like, wow, this is going to cost $7,000, even the
Hmm.
price of it. And then you feel
Yeah.
bad. You're like, oh, well, you
Yep.
don't love them enough to pay that
Yeah.
much. And it's
Yep.
just, yeah,
Yeah,
wow.
and that's one of the things in my file is, financial resources, not just like, of course you love your dog. Of course you want to do whatever you can
Mhm.
to keep them for as long as we can because it's never long enough. But there are realistic things that are going to limit what we're able to do. So, financial, time, impact on the family. So, when I discuss quality of life with my pet parents, it's not just the animal's quality of life, but it's how that animal is affecting the human quality of life. At the end, Barbara was getting medication 5 times a day. So, our lives were completely arranged around these 5 times a day when we needed to be home to medicate him. And
Yeah.
that's really intrusive on day-to-day activities. And if you've got small kids or you've got kids doing sports, like that just may be unreasonable for you to be able to do that. And that doesn't mean that you love that animal any less. It just means that life is life and we have to make those judgment calls. If you are so distraught and worrying so much about, oh, they might pass away overnight or something might happen at 2 a.m., let's plan for that. I'd much rather have a date set, a vet coming out to the house to do an at-home euthanasia. We've planned for it. We're prepared for it. It's a controlled circumstance instead of waiting for there to be a crisis and then you have to rush to the emergency room at 3 a.m. And that's sort of my worst case. My worst nightmare is having a client having to rush to the emergency room where it's frantic and panicked and maybe the whole family can't be there because someone has to stay home with the sleeping kids. And, it's just if we can plan for it, it's weird to be like, all right, next Tuesday, Fluffy's going to get put to sleep. But it gives us a sense of control
Uh,
when often things feel very out of control. So I am a big advocate for let's assess quality of life. Let's data track it. I've got files where it spits out a graph of quality of life. We're tracking, you know, eating, drinking, going to the bathroom, socialization, interactions with family, mobility, like all these things that we factor in. And I have an Excel or a Google Sheets document that spits out a graph and we can see is quality of life increasing, decreasing, or is it plateaued? And
yeah.
so we can get a sense as we're data tracking that, okay, we're starting to see a decline here. This animal's declining. Let's be proactive and make some steps to plan for end of life. And you know what? You can always bump out that appointment. If you're a day or two out And you're like, he's doing great. Okay, let's push it off a couple days. Like end of life vets know that this happens all the time.
Yeah.
So I'd rather you have that space if you need it, that appointment with the vet if you need it. And if you don't need it, great, let's move it a day or two. But let's plan for it. Let's talk about making that last day sort of the best, worst day ever. Who do you want to be there? Do you want flowers? What kind of food do you want to feed that dog on their way out? Music. Do you want to do it inside or outside? Like we did it outside we have two big trees in our yard and the dogs love being under the trees. So we did euthanasia under those trees. And, when Boo Boo passed away, we had her big bed outside and it was covered in her favorite blanket. And the bees were buzzing in the trees because it was early spring. So the canopy was full of things that the bees were into. And it was truly a beautiful day. And we made it a beautiful situation, but it was one of the worst moments of my life. But
Yeah.
those two things can hold that space. It can be
Right.
both beautiful and painful at the same time.
Yeah. And it's so much better to have it beautiful and painful than completely chaotic and freaking out and
Yep.
painful.
Yeah.
So yeah, being able to plan is just so important for our nervous system. It's so important for our
Hmm.
relationships. It gives
Yep.
time for things to work out correct, in the right way
Right.
instead of people missing out on it or yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow, you explained that all so great. I am so happy that you are
Thank
offering
you.
such a seriously the end of life, paperwork for your dog and because so much emotion is wrapped up in death, right? We put a lot into
Yeah.
our pets, our emotional relationship
Hmm.
with our pets, and it's,
Yep.
symbolic for other things in our lives too, I would say.
Yeah.
So being able
Yep.
to have an end of life with your pet like that, I think really smooths the way for better people
Yeah.
end of life.
Yep. And if we're planning, if the dog has some issue that's chronic or long term, like we can do a bucket list. We can talk about like, what activities do we want to do together with this animal? And do we want to do an end of life photo shoot? So we did a beautiful end of life photo shoot with both dogs and some of those pictures are some of my most prized possessions. And yes, it was a painful period because we knew that they were about to die, but having a professional photographer come in and capture really intimate, beautiful moments with us and each dog was just beautiful. And there's a organization that actually keeps a directory of photographers that do these end of life photo shoots, and they're usually discounted or sometimes they're completely free. So on my website, I have a grief resources page, and I've got all sorts of resources for books and podcasts and articles and things like the end of life photography directory. I also have a separate post that's linked in that for a directory state by state of end of life hospice and at home euthanasia vets. So that's all available also on my website. So if you've got a way to sort of link people to that's a really good resource for
Yeah,
people.
definitely. I will definitely will put your contact information in the links and things like that.
Great.
Oh, that is so cool. I'm so glad to learn about what you do. That is,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I mean. There's so many of us, and there's death all the time in different
Yes.
ways, in all
Yep.
creatures. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and it all
Yep.
really is about just life and death. It's just a transition, no matter, and it's love that we're having to,
Right.
you know,
Yeah. Yep.
experience, not release,
Yeah.
because the love doesn't leave us, but
Yeah. Yep.
just a different reality. Hmm.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. Like so many of my clients will say sort of in shame, like, I miss my dog more than I miss my mom, or they'll say something like that. And I think that's just a testament to the relationships that we have, relationships with animals. They're just very pure. They're not judgmental. They're not transactional like so many human relationships are. And we spend more time with our pets than we do for most of our family members, unless you have a parent or a sibling or somebody living with you and sharing your space. We spend more time with our animals than we do friends and family.
Mhm.
And so I think those losing an animal can fall into this sort of space of we don't have standard rituals and routines around pet loss like we do for humans. Most companies don't offer any sort of bereavement time for losing an animal. Some companies do. Some of the animal companies are starting to do that. But it's just not really a really valid or recognized grief for many people. And it's like, oh, when are you going to get a new one? You know, like it's a car or a refrigerator.
Right, right.
So I think having having doulas and having pet loss grief counselors who specialize in that is really important to helping people navigate
It's
this
huge
loss.
because it's honoring the whole human experience. I mean, we have pets, we have friends.
Hmm.
If you have a human best friend, we're going to understand
Yeah.
that you're so
Yep.
sad when they die.
Yep.
Of course.
Yeah.
But so yeah, just and some people aren't pet people. And so they just don't get
Yep.
it. They don't
Yeah.
understand why anyone would be that close. So
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah. Yeah, just being able to represent all kinds of all of us is amazing.
Hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Cool.
So
Well, thank
good.
you so much
Sure. I'm glad
for
I was able to chat with you about this and just
I
sort of
know.
raise awareness about it.
Yeah, because I mean, I didn't know about it and I'm a death doula. I mean, I knew there
Yeah.
was some, but just the whole, I love the whole, the death paperwork for your dogs. That is just huge.
Hmm.
That's a huge.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, people will hopefully come and check out your website because it sounds like it's
Great.
so rich.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank
All
you
right.
very
Thank you
much.
so much.